So today is the second week. We'll be talking about the business model canvas. If you weren't here last week, I'll be doing a super fast overview of what we covered last week before moving into some new material. Today we'll be talking about revenue streams, customer relations, key activities, and key resources. So last week we talked about an example with Startup Inc., a sort of a fictional company we are using to talk about the business model canvas in a little more of a concrete way. And I feel that maybe that example wasn't the best because it kind of was lost to a few people. So perhaps this is old news to you, perhaps this is new to you, but I wanted to do a really like a high level overview of customer models, like ways of looking at who your customers are. There's really three big ones in the startup industry. There's B2B, B2C, and B2G, business to business, business to consumer or customer, and business to government. So B2B is Startup Inc. From last week is an example of a B2B business. It's a business that does business with another business, another company, another firm. This is very lucrative. You can get your contracts can be worth quite a bit. So very high revenue potentially at fairly low cost. So your margins are quite high. But you also have high customer acquisition cost, namely time and energy. It takes a lot of time and energy to get those customers on board. And it's really great for new startups because they're generally speaking not capital intensive. So you can do it with very little money. A good example of this, if any of you are familiar with Japa, Just a Parking App, it's a startup that came out of the Startup Center. They operate out of Woodland right now. They're essentially a software company and they're B2B. They're also B2G. You can certainly be more than one of these things. And then B2C is absolutely, what we're all most familiar with. It's things like Facebook, it's things like Tesla, it's things like new products, things that people buy. Unfortunately, these run on comparatively tighter margins between 25 to 45%. 45, I will say, though, is an excellent margin to be at. They're good to pivot to, but generally you should avoid them unless you're experienced, in my opinion. Just because they can be difficult to navigate, and there's kind of an element of more traditional business acumen involved with it, as opposed to the sort of startup approach to business, which is a little more, it's lean, and kind of what we're talking about in these webinars. And then of course there's B2G. There's very high customer acquisition costs associated with this, time, energy, and capital. They're generally only for civic or research-based startups. So if your work has to do with improving government efficiency, or if your work is like R&D, like you're a research startup, you're trying to figure out this new technology. Typically, especially for the research side, you're going to need a team of experts, someone with a PhD, people with MBAs, a ton of experience, and they're really good choices for mid to late career entrepreneurs. Now, there are, of course, exceptions to all of these. So I gave the example of Japa. They're both a B2B and B2G company, and their founders don't necessarily have that 10 plus years of experience. But that's because they found a product, a problem to solve, which didn't necessarily require all of that experience. They were able to show that their product worked, and that was enough for their customers. Yeah. So with that, we're going to be pivoting, if you will, our example, just to kind of help everyone grasp what we're talking about. So we're going to be shifting over to a B2C company. Let's see. So the new company we're going to be talking about is Green Thumb Inc. We're developing the newest way to garden fast, and we offer everything that someone needs to get their garden started. We offer planter boxes, soil, fertilizer, seeds, accessory, all that stuff. And so as we continue to grow as a company and as a brand, we want to run lean and iterate our business practices using the business model Canvas. So that's kind of the setup. And so this is the brief overview of last week. Customer segments. So we've identified a few customer segments. First, independent college-aged Americans located coastally. So 18 to 25, people who, like to do things on their own, DIYers, if you will. Retirees with limited energy or mobility, they need something to do with all of their time. And why not, garden? And then of course, hobbyists, people who just do this for fun. So those are three potential customer segments that we've identified thus far. And value proposition. So last week we talked about the different aspects of a value proposition. Generally speaking, you want to take those things and assemble them into an actual statement. The statement kind of formula is super simple. It's, our company does this thing for people. And often you can include some aspect of which is better than the alternative because of this reason. So our value proposition statement is Green Thumb Inc. provides new gardeners with all the tools, materials, and knowledge needed to start their very own garden. It's clear, it's concise, like I know what you do and I know what value you're proposing to the customer. So are there any questions on that company, customer segments, customer models, value proposition, anything like that? Okay, so we're going to be jumping into the new material now, starting with revenue streams. Revenue streams are pretty easy to conceptualize. They're just recurring or otherwise significant sources of income. They can include, one-off customer purchases, which is more of a stream, just because there are lots of customers, ideally, making these one-off purchases. Subscription payments is another form of a revenue stream, and annuitized loans. Annuitize or annuitization is essentially just taking a lump sum payment and kind of allocating it across a period of time artificially. So let's say I take out a loan for $10 million this year, or 12 million, we'll make the math easy. And that loan is supposed to sustain my business for this year. So I'm gonna allocate 1/12 of that to every month. So $1 million every month. That's kind of what annuitization is. It gets a little more complicated when you're talking about like paying off those loans. So those are examples of different revenue streams. So generally, each of them has a corresponding revenue model. Exceptions would include loans. I personally kind of identify loans and these sorts of one-off grants, things like that, as a revenue stream, because they're, potentially renewable. Probably not loans. You shouldn't like take out loans every single year to fund your business, but maybe grants are. Some people might not define those as revenue. Oh, sorry, that's my cat. Well, my sister's cat. Might not define these as revenue streams. Sorry. Might not define these as revenue streams just because they're not essentially your customers paying you, if you will. They're other sources of income that are less tied to the quality of your product, if you will. I'm gonna let my cat outside because it's complaining. 1 second. Sorry about that. So are there any questions on revenue streams?
Question.
Oh yeah.
How broad is this term? Because I've been like reading about this term and like there's not a specific set of revenue streams, right? There's like people have different definitions for it.
Absolutely, right? Yeah. And creative companies find new revenue streams that other people haven't thought of. A good example are subscription payments, or subscription models. That wasn't really a thing 20, 30 years ago. Well, sure, you could argue that magazines had that as a revenue model. But companies are always figuring out new ways to continuously bring in cash. So if I would say the most general definition for a revenue stream is a consistent inflow of cash that can be predicted.
Thank you.
For sure. Cool. So a little bit on revenue models. Revenue models are essentially just schemes to pull in revenue on a recurring basis. So they're not the money that you pull in, but they're how you pull in the money, if that makes sense. So examples might include direct sales. So in talking about one-off customer purchases, that's the revenue stream. The corresponding model would be direct sales, which is just I sell my product directly to the customer. Subscription models, obviously corresponding to subscription payments, and then SBIR cycling, or Small Business Innovation and Research. I think that's what that stands for. It's if you're doing anything research-based or anything even remotely technology-based, I highly recommend that you look into SBIR grants. They're essentially money that the government has to give out. According to some law, I believe every institution has to give 2% of their income or something to that effect to SBIR. And they're a really good way to get money. And I know of a few companies that's kind of what they live off of, which is totally fine. But you also, kind of want to get some cash flow from actual customers and not just these grants. And like I was saying before, the list of revenue models or revenue streams is in no way exhaustive. Companies are always finding new and innovative ways to get paid. So it's really good to understand exactly how you're getting paid. If it's a common way, maybe not doing writing a white paper or something on it is super necessary, because investors are going to know what you're talking about. If I say, yeah, we have a subscription-based model, this is what we charge our customers every month or whatever, an investor's going to be like, cool, I get it, let's move on. But if maybe you come up with something new and innovative that's kind of unique to your company, then looking into it more and talking to people about exactly how it would work and how you can verify you're getting the amount of money that you think you're going to get within a period of time, or with respect to a purchase for a product, that kind of information would be really useful when talking to investors and things like that. And often they're more complex than, not all the time, absolutely they can be super simple, but often they are more complex than my customer pays me X dollars a month for my service. And so in a lot of situations, pricing schemes can be considered trade secret. Especially in B2B companies. That's often, you don't want your competitors knowing how you're charging. And also B2G. But also B2G companies are a little more customer focused in terms of how much, how you're pricing, if that makes sense. Things get a little more nitty gritty when you're talking about B2G. So it's difficult to generalize. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So, cool. And that covers revenue. So we're going to hop over to the sheet, and we're going to figure out our revenue streams for Green Thumb Inc. So I'm going to, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. So, on a volunteer basis at first, if you want to shout out some revenue streams that we have, or potential revenue streams, because again, we're exploring our business model canvas, we're not defining it. So whoever has an idea, what are revenue streams that we operate on? Cool. Caden, what is a revenue stream for our Green Thumb Inc? Cool. Thank you, Fernando, in the chat. Yeah, direct sales is absolutely a revenue stream. So, like I said before, we offer the whole package, soil, planners, stuff like that. So, direct sales is definitely a way of facilitating that. What else? Get creative, guys. How can we package our product to create new streams of revenue?
We could do web sales too, right?
Absolutely. Subscription based. Yi, do you want to comment on what we would be giving on a recurring basis? Yilin.
Maybe it can be similar to web sales, but like each customer can have an account. So if they do try to repurchase, they don't need that hassle to.
Okay. Go for it, Gianna.
Yeah, adding on to the subscription base, maybe every month or so, gardeners can be sent different kinds of plants to try out, maybe some new fertilizers and stuff like that.
Awesome. So sort of like a monthly care package that a lot of these companies are doing. That's great. Yeah. So we have three revenue streams that we've identified so far. And these are all pretty standard ones and certainly are super applicable to our Green Thumb Inc. Direct sales, of course, maybe I'm a hobbyist and I don't necessarily need the whole package, but I really like the tools that this company is carrying. So I'm gonna go ahead and just buy just these tools to add to my collection or whatever. Our value proposition, let me hop over. We offer new gardeners with tools, material, and knowledge needed to start their very own garden. That is our value proposition, for sure. Yes. Thank you, Shinkan. So services. Do you want to elaborate on that? Okay, maybe not. So Shenghan gives the example of like teaching how to gardening. So maybe we could. It might not be a revenue stream, but or maybe it is. Maybe we do something similar to Masterclass, where you have to pay to have access to that kind of stuff. Or maybe we incorporate it into our subscription model, sort of like a weekly or a monthly video how-to, like, hey, there's this opportunity, or sorry, there's this technique, or this kind of plant, kind of teaching our customer base, how to do stuff. So I'm gonna write that off to the side. I'm just gonna include that as like a how-to. General how-to videos in content. And I'm going to leave it there because I think it actually goes well into our next segment. So moving into the next bit, customer relations. This is exactly what the title suggests. It's the relationships that you're developing with your customer. So every good company has good relations with their customers. If they don't, then, or at least consumer facing ones. And even, actually no, every good company has good relations with their customers. I can't think of a single exception. Because at the end of the day, your customers are how you're bringing in revenue, and revenue is good, so you want good relations with your customer. And so facilitating those relationships is the goal of this portion of the business model canvas. So it's not enough to say like, oh, we'll have a customer relations department. Oh, we'll have a, you know, it's called a bunch of different things at a bunch of different companies. But, you know, we'll have a department that talks to customers, customer service, things like that. It's not enough to talk about, just to say rather that you have one of those things. You need to also talk about how that department operates. What are the means that you're going to utilize in order to develop and propagate those relationships? You know, if we talk about like our friends, and especially right now, you know, how do we maintain our relationships with our friends right now, and in general? You know, it's not enough to say like, oh, I'm really good friends with Giancarlo. I'm really good friends with Kelly. It's not enough to say that. How are you good friends with that person? Like, oh, we have Zoom hangouts and play board games with all of our friends once a week. That's a really good example of like a specific way in which you foster that relationship. So similarly, in the sense of in the context of a business, I don't want to know just that you have good relationships with your customer, but how are you facilitating those relationships? So, for example, company X is B2G and facilitates its customer relations with weekly memos, monthly sit downs, and detailed quarterly reports. And this is actually pretty common in B2G relationships. You want to give them a near constant flow of information that is either you know, vague and high level so that they can see it in a weekly memo and be like, okay, cool, they're doing stuff. I'm going to go on and do my next thing. That is personal. So talking about monthly or maybe quarterly, it depends on the availability of your government contact, to just talk to them. And they're probably going to have questions that they might not think of in an email. And so, you know, talking to them over the phone, in person, if ever possible, in any way really is a fantastic way for them to get information that you might not necessarily think of. Because again, you know, you're not a government, you know, bureaucrat or official, so you don't necessarily think in the way that they do or have access to the information that they do. And then detailed quarterly reports. You know, often these don't get read. From my own experience working with government agencies, but they are very useful information because there might be one or two specific points that they're going to be looking for. And they're going to find those and say, okay, cool, I'm glad I know this piece of information, but maybe I have a question about it. And so they can read through your report or a segment of your report to kind of gather more information about what it is that you're doing, your technology, your operations, things like that. So having kind of a wide variety of ways to foster that relationship is very important. Of course, with consumers, it might be a little different in how we do that. Face-to-faces with customers probably isn't super possible. Maybe it is, but we will figure that out. So we're going to hop back over to that sheet and then talk about customer relations. So I'm going to steal Shengan's. I'm sorry if I'm guarantee I'm pronouncing your name wrong, so I apologize. I'm going to steal your point about those how-to videos. And I'm going to say that that's actually a way of fostering relationships with their customers. It's not necessarily a back and forth, but it is a sort of a potentially free service that we're offering, or an add-on that we're, you know, throwing in with our subscription models. So, you know, how to content is a really good way of kind of engaging a customer without being engaged with them, if that makes sense. So you're kind of you're giving them something to be involved with and to learn from. Like, for example, I watch a bunch of DIY videos on woodworking because I think woodworking is super interesting. And, you know, I feel a sort of engagement watching these videos because, like, I'm learning stuff and I'm kind of being engaged in their creative process. And so maybe we as a company can tap into that. So let's get a few other examples of customer relations in the context of our company. Gianna?
Yeah, so this is kind of adding on to the idea of the subscription care package. So maybe potential customers could take like a survey based on their interests or gardening experience. And based on that, the company can send them different things.
Okay, yeah. So we do sort of like a curated experience. Great idea. That's also, you know, kind of a really good one because again, it doesn't require a lot of engagement on our part. You could totally automate that. So yeah, great idea. Fernando says customer support. Can you elaborate on that, Fernando?
Maybe like the customers have like specific questions regarding their products or this, or like how to actually like build your own garden.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, you know, maybe a customer is following our instructions and something doesn't seem super clear. Having someone to actually talk to, I'm sure would be really valuable to them. And, you know, maybe we can use that information to kind of refine our product. Maybe our instructions weren't clear enough and a lot of people are having this issue. Well, maybe we should rewrite our instructions. So that's also a good way to gather information about our product and on how to improve. What else?
Maybe they can suggest on the, you know, maybe they can recommend like seeds for seasonal plants, because, you know, like for instance, like if now it's spring, there are certain plants that are not available, so you want to probably inform customers on that, or like, or you can recommend them on what they probably interested in. Yeah.
Okay. How are we going to deliver that information? Like, what's the media that we're going to use?
Probably by email.
Okay.
Yeah.
So seasonal, or sorry, not seasonal, emails on seasonal products and produce. And, you know, maybe we send that more often than just seasonal. So again, similar to the how-to content, you know, having something that customers can engage with without us being engaged in actively with each individual is always a great idea. Anything else?
I was
Donna?
thinking of like sitting down with our customers, like having kind of like a FaceTime or a video call, especially now in this time that we are all secluded to in our homes, you know, kind of like, I think that would help the customers a lot, and that would actually like leave a really good impression of our business.
Okay. So let's say that we do really well, that our business is doing great, and we have a lot of customers, you know, which is an ideal situation, you know, not just tens or hundreds, but thousands and tens of thousands. How do we or do we scale our customer sit downs and video calls?
we could have a specific team for that though. We could have like a sector in our company that is, it's true. It's gonna be a lot of people that is gonna be perhaps calling, but I think you could have a team, that works towards that.
Okay. So maybe that's another facet of our customer service and customer support program. In addition to the answering specific questions over the phone and things like that. I think Gianna had something. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe for customer birthdays, our company could give them some kind of like complimentary product or discount.
That's great. Yeah, my own mom doesn't give me birthday presents, so dude, if a company did, that's a joke. My mom gives me birthday presents. But yeah, that's definitely a really good example of something that's individualized, something that makes the customer feel like they're really valued by a company, and they should be. Cool. Awesome. Those are all really good examples. I have a feeling that whatever companies you all start in your futures are going to have great customer relations. Cool. So now we're going to be talking about key activities, which again is pretty much what it sounds like. So what does your day-to-day look like? These are rhetorical questions. What does your day-to-day look like? What are the sort of the things that you do in order to maintain and operate your business? Those are your key activities. Those are things that you want to be conscious of and keep in mind when you're thinking about how to improve your business, how to optimize things, and things like that. So for example, Space Dudes LLC. It's a logistics provider for ESA, European Space Agency missions, and they have identified the following key activities for them. They have to maintain communication and distribution of information with their customers, with their providers, and within their own firm, with their employees. They execute research and development for searching for more efficient ways to distribute supplies. They conduct analysis on the capabilities of their suppliers. And of course, they have business sustaining operations that any other company would have. Just so that you're aware, it's not actually important, but a logistics provider for a space agency is basically just like a shipping company for a space agency. That's all it is. It's like Amazon for NASA. Nothing special, really. So those are some key activities that might be associated with the logistics provider. So I think that's actually all we have on key. Yeah, cool. So we're gonna hop back over and talk about key activities for a business. And again, I'm gonna steal the easy one because I like it when you guys are creative. Customer relations. It's something that we should be doing and something that's going to be important to us. So it's a key activity. I'll also write, wrong cell. See previous sheet. So what are other key activities for our company? America. Are you there? Okay. Alex.
Sorry, I missed the question. What was it?
No worries. What are for a green thumb? What are our key activities, or what is one of them? Things that we need to do in order to operate as a company.
Um, is this related to um, the previous activity we talked about with the birthday presents and seasonal products?
Yeah, definitely. But I also took that one because it's an easy one. So, what else do we need to do in order to operate as a business?
Oh, okay. Have a website.
Cool. Does anyone else have some ideas? There's a few major ones.
Do research in order to find the most efficient ways and most simple ways, to show the customers how to do gardening.
Okay, so
Kind of like researching and
yeah, I'll list that as as R&D for gardening practices. Grading.
Could we also put out ads?
Cool. Are we gonna do that in-house or okay. So this is one of those issues that every company has to deal with. There are a number of things, aspects, key activities, if you will, that definitely need to be done, but might be too cost intensive to execute yourself. Advertisements might be one of those. It also might not. So maybe we do our marketing through social media. We decide that that's going to be the most effective, source of the best way for us to acquire new companies. And I mean, if we're already doing how-tos, if we already maintain our own website, it's probably within reason to say that we have a design team or, more creative people, less technical, less business focused. So maybe we can do our own advertisements. And in fact, I'm going to keep this here. But in your own entrepreneurial journeys, think about whether you want to do that in-house or not. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. All right, I'm going to go ahead and list a few that are pretty major. So we offer physical goods. So we need to make those physical goods or source them. Realistically, if we're doing all this other stuff, maintaining a website, maintaining robust customer relations, doing our own ads, we're probably not going to be, it sounds like our team is more creative. It sounds like our team is more business focused. So it sounds like we're probably not the ones like making the fertilizer, making the soil, building the tools. So I'm going to kind of wrap up all of our products into supplier relations. So getting our stuff, basically. And then on the other end of that, distributor relations. So how we get our stuff to our customers. If you're ever working with physical goods, you're always going to have suppliers. You're always going to have distributors. I don't think there is a single company in the world that maintains their entire supply chain in-house, meaning they harvest their raw materials, They do all of their pre-processing, they do all of their processing, they do all of their own packaging, and they do all of their own distribution. The closest company I can think of to doing that is Amazon. But even then, they don't actually produce anything. They just handle the back end. They just handle the storage and the distribution and things like that. So if you ever work with physical goods, you're going to have those two things to worry about. And I'll leave key activities there. And this is also sort of one of those things that as you are, operating as a company, figuring things out, that you're going to be revising this. You're going to be discovering like, oh, hey, we should really be doing this. Or you might be like, hey, we're doing this thing like every day or every week. We should definitely include it as one of our key activities. And the purpose behind figuring out these key activities is so that you can be aware of inefficiencies within your company. And so that you can maybe build a system diagram of your company and how it operates, something that we talked about, I think, week 1 or week 2 rather. Cool. Any questions on key activities? Dope. So last thing for today, last topic is key resources. Again, pretty straightforward. The 3 most common resources needed by any company are capital, so money, talent, so like you or I, and time. Time being one of those things that unfortunately, we can't really increase our supply of. Or you could do so artificially by hiring more people, but that comes at the expense of capital. So. Physical space is also something that's like on the list for a lot of companies and likely for ours if we're having physical goods. But of course, key resources aren't restricted to just these 4 things. So I would define key resources as any physical item, intellectual property, or capability needed to execute an activity. So for example, this fictional immigration law firm, Fleitman and Fleitman, they have the following key resources. They need access to legal literature, so things like forms, regulations, academic writing. They need the talent and the clout of the firm's partners, presumably Fleitman and Fleitman. And of course, they need the time, the energy, and the morale of the firm's employees. Because a legal firm is, they have very little, physical goods that they handle, if any, and because they don't necessarily have the need to maintain a very robust, marketing team, their list of key resources is pretty short. Perhaps you could add their office space to this list. And of course, capital is going to be on the list, but that's kind of a given. But these are kind of like the big 3 special ones to this firm. So like before, we're going to go ahead and start talking about key resources for our company. So go ahead and shout them out. What are some important things that our company needs in order to execute our key activities? Fernando, what's a key resource that we need?
I mean, all the materials needed to build your own garden, so like seeds, gardening tools, all like the physical things that the customers are actually going to get.
Awesome.
A website?
That's great. Well, I wouldn't consider the website necessarily a resource, but I like your thinking. I'm going to say web developer. the website itself is a thing that we have, and I mean, let's call it physical. Let's ignore the whole digital weirdness. But I would say if you want to like go down the list, the thing we really need is someone who's capable of maintaining the website. So like a web developer.
Adding on to that, I guess you would also need a designer to make it look good.
Yeah, design team. Realistically, you're going to need a team. So again, along the lines of talent. Shoot. There it is. Labor, people who can provide gardening services. Okay. So, Yi, do you want to elaborate on why we need people to provide the gardening services? And as a reminder, you know, we kind of supply the stuff, so the materials for customer products, and we provide the know-how. Yilin.
Sorry, I like this. I didn't get our companies. I guess if we don't provide the service, then we don't need the labor.
Yeah. So yeah, so we don't necessarily do the gardening for people. We kind of give them the tools so that they can do it themselves. So our customers provide the labor, but you know, we don't necessarily care if, well, of course we care if they're successful in their gardening, but we don't necessarily profit directly from it.
Okay, got it.
For sure. Good thinking though, for sure.
Someone that, you know, we need somehow to, you know, a way to get to our customers, you know, like distribute it. So we would need a company or, you know, pay someone to deliver our product, or we could deliver our product ourselves.
Absolutely. We might have multiple distributors. We might be the distributor, but in either case, we need one.
Do we need investors as well? Like people that, it's just,
Yeah, maybe. I'll write capital,
mhm.
possibly investors. We're definitely going to need money somehow, like every company does. And when we're getting started, our customers might not necessarily be the best source of a lot of that capital. So yeah, we're going to need some of that. I'm going to go ahead and throw away some of the important ones since we're kind of out of time. So similar to how we need distributors in order to distribute our product, we need suppliers. And that ties pretty closely into the materials. So I'm actually gonna, I'm actually gonna tie that to this place, or suppliers, and or. And then similar to talents with the web developer or and the design team, we're also going to need a CR department, a customer relations. And there's probably a bunch of other key resources that we're kind of ignoring right now. And we could definitely lump a lot of these, or 3 of these, into the general pool of talent. But in either case, good thinking on what we need. So just a super quick review what we talked about that's new today. We discussed revenue streams, which is how you get your money, essentially the means and the methods of channeling cash into your company. We talked about customer relations. How do you make sure that your customer knows you and likes you? You got to be friends with your customer, man. Key activities, stuff that you do. It's pretty straightforward. And key resources, stuff that you need. Also super straightforward. So thank you everyone for logging on. I appreciate your time and your energy. there are no questions, I will say goodbye. Alex, yes, there is a recording from last week. I don't know how you all are getting access to it. I believe it will be posted on YouTube, but I don't know when. So stay tuned. There'll probably be an email if you're on our email listserv. For sure.